Dear viewers, what you're about to hear is one of the most immersive stories of transformation and mystery that has ever crossed our channel. This is the story of Dr. Sarah Mitchell, whose disappearance in Ghana became international news. But what really happened will shock you. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more amazing true stories. The headlines screamed across international media for 72 hours. American professor vanishes without trace in remote African village. CNN ran it twice. The BBC mentioned it during their international segment. Social media buzzed with speculation. Then, as quickly as it had captured attention, the story faded. But for those who knew Sarah Mitchell, the silence was deafening. This was a woman who had built her life on precision and communication. For 22 years, she'd been a tenured anthropology professor at Columbia University, publishing research with clockwork regularity, answering emails within hours. Sarah's daughter, Jennifer, described the chilling realization: "My mother sent me a text every Sunday morning for 15 years. Just hope you're having a good week. Love you." When the third Sunday passed without that text, I knew something catastrophic had happened. The last communication anyone received from Dr. Sarah Mitchell was an email to her research supervisor on March 15th. The village governance structures here are far more complex than our academic models suggested. I need significantly more time here, extending my research indefinitely. Will be in touch when I have findings. Then nothing. Complete silence. No phone calls, emails, social media updates, credit card activity. Nothing from a woman who had never gone 48 hours without contact with the outside world. 3 weeks later, Jennifer boarded a plane to Ghana with growing panic and documents she hoped would help trace her mother's movements. Local authorities had filed a missing person report, but explained that search operations in remote forest regions were extremely limited. When Jennifer reached Nkwanta village after a harrowing 6-hour journey on barely qualified roads, what she discovered made her blood run cold. The Land Rover sat abandoned, driver's door unlocked, personal belongings scattered across seats, laptop bag still in back. No signs of struggle, no evidence of violence. Village residents confirmed Dr. Mitchell had been there for months, conducting research. Chief Kwame Asante, her primary contact, expressed genuine concern and offered full cooperation, but no one could explain where she had gone or why she had abandoned everything. It was like she had evaporated, Jennifer told reporters. "My mother was the most careful, methodical person I've ever known. She didn't make impulsive decisions. Something terrible must have happened." But the truth was far more extraordinary than anyone imagined. Sarah hadn't been kidnapped or fallen victim to dangers. She had discovered who she was meant to be. To understand what really happened, we need to go back to the woman who boarded that plane 6 months earlier, carrying professional expectations, but also profound emptiness she'd spent decades ignoring. At 50, Dr. Sarah Mitchell appeared to have achieved everything ambitious academics dream of: prestigious Columbia position, international recognition, extensive publications, worldwide lectures. But beneath professional success, Sarah was drowning in a life that felt hollow. Her divorce 3 years earlier had been devastating, ending a 20-year marriage to a fellow academic who had grown as distant as she had become. Her adult children maintained polite but infrequent contact that left Sarah feeling more like a distant relative than a mother. Most painfully, Sarah realized her life's work, studying how others lived, how communities functioned, had insulated her from ever truly experiencing those things herself. She was an expert on human connection who felt profoundly disconnected. The Ghana research grant was supposed to be just another project. Sarah had built her career studying traditional governance from university libraries, analyzing others' lives without risking genuine engagement. When her plane touched down in Accra, Sarah's emotional state was professionally competent, but spiritually exhausted. She went through travel motions efficiently, but her heart wasn't invested. The 3-hour drive to Nkwanta should have been Sarah's first clue this experience would challenge everything she knew. As paved roads became dirt paths, as urban landscape transformed into forest, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years, uncertain. When her driver pulled into Nkwanta's center, Sarah's reaction mixed professional assessment with personal discomfort. This wasn't the rural African village of textbooks. Solar panels powered LED lights. Children had both homemade toys and tablet computers. Traditional architecture incorporated modern materials, reflecting heritage and innovation. The people challenged Sarah's expectations most. The village council included individuals with university degrees, international business experience, sophisticated global understanding. These weren't isolated traditional villagers she'd expected, but modern Africans who had chosen community-centered lives, integrating traditional and contemporary wisdom. Chief Kwame Asante was most surprising. At 45, he carried traditional authority through quiet confidence. Learning he'd studied law at Oxford and worked as a human rights attorney in London before returning to lead his community made Sarah realize her academic frameworks were inadequate. Dr. Mitchell, Chief Kwame said during their first meeting, "We're honored to welcome a scholar of your reputation. My people have agreed to share experiences, but I hope you'll also share your story. We're eager to learn from visitors, bringing different insights." That invitation to share her story rather than extract information was unexpected. In her career, she'd always been observer, analyst, expert studying subjects. The idea these villagers might learn from her personal experience, not just credentials, was both flattering and terrifying. Sarah was assigned comfortable guest house accommodations, simple but well appointed, with solar electricity, running water, beautiful views. That first evening, alone reviewing research notes, she heard something that stopped her. Music from the village center, voices joined in harmony. Without conscious decision, Sarah walked toward the sound. What she discovered challenged every assumption. The evening gathering wasn't tourist performance, but organic community conversation, flowing between languages, generations, topics. Families sat around central fire, sharing stories, moving from practical concerns to philosophical discussions. Children wove between adults who included them naturally. Elders offered wisdom as contribution to dialogue rather than final pronouncement. As Sarah observed with detached analysis, Chief Kwame noticed the stranger lingering in shadows. He approached with a warm smile, seeing through her professional facade. "Dr. Mitchell," he said gently, "you're watching us like laboratory specimens. Would you prefer joining us as a human being?" The question hit like a physical blow, precisely accurate. How long since anyone had invited her to simply be present, rather than perform some academic function? That night, sitting around the fire listening to stories in multiple languages, Sarah experienced something significant. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely interested in the moment she was living, rather than analyzing it for future academic purpose. Chief Kwame had expected his invitation was polite courtesy. Sarah would decline for professional distance. When she actually accepted and participated all evening, he seemed as surprised as she was. Their research interview the next morning carried undertones of mutual curiosity beyond formal documentation requirements. As Sarah learned about Kwame's background, legal education, London law practice, decision to return home after his father's death, she found herself intrigued by the intellectual journey bringing him back. This wasn't someone who'd never left home, but someone who'd explored the world and consciously chosen to invest talents in his community. In England, I learned about systems of law, Kwame explained, but here I learned about systems of justice. The difference is everything. Sarah shared research insights, but also expressed doubts, never voiced to colleagues. I've spent 20 years studying how communities function, but I've never been part of a real community myself. What do you mean by real community? Kwame asked with genuine curiosity. A place where people know your name because your presence matters to their lives, where your contributions change things, affecting real people, where others care about your well-being because you belong to something larger. Kwame studied Sarah's face thoughtfully. You speak like someone who has been very lonely for a very long time. The words cracked something open she'd kept sealed for years. She had been desperately lonely, but had convinced herself intellectual achievement was sufficient substitute for genuine connection. As weeks passed, Sarah's research transformed. Instead of maintaining scholarly distance, she participated in village life. She helped during harvest, learned traditional cooking, began picking up EU phrases for better communication. The women of Quanta adopted Sarah as a sister, with unprecedented warmth. Elder Akasoa, whose weathered hands created beautiful crafts, became Sarah's mentor in ways of life beyond textbook. You came here to study us, Akasoa said one afternoon, but perhaps the ancestors sent you here to study yourself. Sarah's relationship with Chief Kwame evolved beyond professional collaboration. Their evening conversations stretched longer each night, covering philosophy, literature, dreams, regrets, questions about authentic living. Sarah learned Kwame's London career sacrifice had been more difficult than initially understood. He'd been engaged to a British woman who couldn't understand his commitment to returning home. The relationship ended when she refused to consider Ghana, and he refused to abandon his people. Do you ever regret that choice? Sarah asked during late conversation. Every day, I discover it was right for reasons I couldn't have imagined, Kwame replied. Perhaps our most important choices seem impossible to explain to others when we make them. Growing intimacy created complications, both recognized but neither wanted to address. Sarah's grant ended in 6 weeks, meaning return to New York, to her university position, to the life she'd built over 2 decades. But leaving Quanta now felt like spiritual death. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While organizing village archives, a project becoming personal passion, Sarah uncovered documents revealing Quanta's governance sophistication. The community's approach wasn't just traditional, it was revolutionary. Their integration of customary law with democratic principles, individual rights with collective responsibility, sustainable resource management with economic development, all represented unprecedented models that could transform international understanding. This is groundbreaking research, Sarah told Kwame with surprising intensity. This could change how the international community approaches African development. This could influence United Nations policy. Kwame smiled with uninterpretable expression, pride mixed with sadness. And it will make you famous in your academic world, give you the success you came seeking. But as Kwame spoke, Sarah realized professional success was no longer what she wanted. Somewhere during her months here, she'd stopped being a researcher studying a community and had become someone who belonged to that community. The idea of returning to New York to write papers about Nkwanta while suffocating in her old life felt like the worst betrayal of herself, of the village that welcomed her, of the relationship with Kwame that had become her most authentic connection. That night, Sarah made the decision that would puzzle everyone who thought they knew her. She packed research notes into waterproof containers, left them with an explanatory letter, and walked alone into the forest surrounding the village. Not to disappear forever, but to create space where she could think clearly about what she really wanted, without pressure of expectations or familiar routines. She would spend 5 days alone among the trees, surviving on fruit and stream water, thinking more clearly than she had in years. The silence would force her to confront truths she'd been avoiding. But what happened during those 5 days in the forest, and the shocking decision Sarah made when she emerged, will leave you speechless. The truth about what Sarah discovered about herself, her life-changing conversation with Chief Kwame, and the incredible transformation that followed, will challenge everything you think you know about love, identity, and finding your authentic self. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for part 2, where we'll reveal the shocking truth behind Sarah Mitchell's disappearance and what happened when her family finally found her. You won't believe what happens next. Welcome back to the most incredible story of transformation we've ever shared. If you missed part 1, go watch it now. You need to know about Sarah Mitchell's mysterious disappearance to understand what we're about to reveal. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing true stories. When we left Sarah Mitchell, she had just made the shocking decision to walk alone into the dense African forest, abandoning everything she'd worked for. What happened during those 5 days would change everything. The forest around Nkwanta village was dense, ancient, and unforgiving. Sarah had never spent a night outdoors, let alone survived alone in African wilderness, but desperate clarity gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. She found shelter under a massive baobab tree, whose hollow trunk provided protection. She located a stream with clean water and fruit trees for basic sustenance, but most importantly, she found complete silence that forced her to confront truths she'd spent decades avoiding. On the first night, lying on the forest floor listening to unidentified sounds, Sarah experienced terror, unlike anything she'd known. Not fear of physical danger, but fear of what she was considering: abandoning everything she'd built, everyone who depended on her, every identity she'd constructed over 50 years of careful living. By the second day, terror transformed into clarity. Without distractions, no phones, internet, academic obligations, social expectations, Sarah could finally hear her own thoughts. She realized she hadn't made a single decision based purely on what she wanted in over 20 years. On the third day, she began talking aloud. What do I actually want? The answer came not in words, but in physical sensation. Her chest relaxing, breathing deepening, body releasing tension she'd carried for decades. She wanted to belong somewhere. She wanted her work to matter to real people. She wanted to love someone who saw her authentic self rather than professional achievements. She wanted to contribute to something larger than academic reputation. Everything she truly desired was waiting in Nkwanta village, if she had courage to claim it. On the fourth day, Sarah made peace with possibly never seeing her American family again, not because she didn't love them, but because trying to live according to others' definitions of success had nearly killed everything authentic within her. When Sarah emerged on the 5th morning and walked back into Nkwanta, she looked transformed. Her clothes were torn and dirty, hair tangled with leaves, skin scratched by branches, but her eyes carried certainty that hadn't been there before. Chief Kwame was waiting at the village entrance, as if he'd known she would need that time alone and would return with a life-changing decision. I want to stay, Sarah said without preamble, not as a researcher studying your community from academic distance, but as someone who belongs here, who contributes to well-being, who builds a life as part of something larger. If you'll have me. Kwame's response was careful and honest about the challenges such a choice involved. Sarah, this isn't vacation romance, or academic adventure, or temporary escape. This is choosing a completely different life, with difficulties you can't imagine, from your comfortable American existence. Are you prepared for what that really means?
I don't know, Sarah replied with surprising honesty. I'm terrified by what I'm considering, but I'm more terrified of going back to sleepwalking through a life that has never felt real. The village council meeting, where Sarah formally requested to join the community permanently, was unlike any governance proceeding she'd witnessed. The elders didn't just ask about credentials or finances, they wanted to understand her commitment to the community's future challenge. They needed to know whether she could show strength during difficult seasons. When crops failed, they questioned whether she could demonstrate wisdom. When families disagreed and needed mediation, they explored whether she could maintain loyalty. When outsiders criticized their choice, Elder Akasawa spoke last for the women. She has shown respect for our ways and brought valuable knowledge, but respect and knowledge are only the beginning. Can she show courage to stand with us during hardship? Can she show wisdom to lead when her experience provides insight? Can she show humility to follow when others have greater knowledge? Sarah's response carried complete honesty. I can only promise to try with everything I have, to learn from mistakes, to give my whole heart to this community that has given me back my life. I cannot promise perfection, but I can promise commitment. The formal adoption ceremony took place during the next full moon, with rituals connecting Sarah to ancestors and future generations. She chose the name Amma Serwa, born on Saturday, wealthy woman, wealthy not in possessions, but in belonging and purpose. The decision to not immediately contact her family was Sarah's most difficult choice. She knew her disappearance would cause pain, but she needed time to become who she was meant to be before explaining her transformation. For 6 months, Sarah lived completely within Quanta community rhythm. She learned traditional farming, herbal medicine, conflict mediation, decision-making processes, balancing individual needs with collective welfare. She discovered physical and emotional strength she didn't know she possessed. Her relationship with Kwame evolved from intellectual attraction into partnership, balancing romantic love with shared community responsibility. They worked together on development projects combining traditional wisdom with modern innovation. They collaborated on educational initiatives, preparing children for contemporary success while maintaining cultural heritage. The morning Jennifer Mitchell arrived with Ghanaian authorities and media attention, Sarah was coordinating response to a neighboring village's water project request. When she looked up to see her daughter surrounded by police officers, both women stopped breathing. Jennifer barely recognized the woman approaching with calm confidence and obvious community authority. Gone was the tense, professionally dressed academic she remembered. In her place was someone moving with natural grace, skin glowing with health, eyes sparkling with purpose and contentment Jennifer had never seen. "Mom," Jennifer whispered, unable to trust her vision. "Hello, my daughter," Sarah replied, using the ewe greeting she'd learned, her voice carrying new warmth and strength. "I have so much to tell you." The conversation over following days challenged everything Jennifer thought she knew about her mother and forced her to confront assumptions about success, happiness, and authentic living. Sarah explained her choice not as abandonment of American identity, but as discovery of who she'd always been meant to be. "I know this seems impossible to understand," Sarah said, as they watched sunset paint surrounding hills. "But I was dying slowly in New York, suffocating in a life that looked successful but felt empty. I came alive here in ways I never knew possible. This isn't midlife crisis or romantic fantasy. This is me finally becoming real." Jennifer stayed 2 weeks, initially planning to convince her mother to return for psychological evaluation. Instead, she witnessed transformation that challenged her own understanding of fulfillment. She watched Sarah teaching children, mediating disputes, working on projects improving entire families' lives. She saw deep respect and genuine affection the village had for this American woman who'd chosen to make their community home. Most importantly, Jennifer witnessed the relationship between her mother and Chief Kwame, not tourist romance, but mature partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and commitment to something larger than individual happiness. The traditional wedding ceremony Jennifer witnessed was unlike anything in her experience, but its emotional authenticity was unmistakable. Ghanaian customs, blended with Sarah's American heritage, created celebration, honoring both cultures while creating something entirely new. The village transformed the occasion into a three-day festival, turning their union into symbol of cultural bridge building. When Jennifer returned to New York to share the truth about her mother's disappearance, the story she told challenged everyone's assumptions about mental health, success, and authentic living. Sarah's academic colleagues initially reacted with shock, unable to understand how a respected scholar could abandon her career for what they perceived as primitive village life. But the research papers Sarah began publishing from Quanta revolutionized academic understanding of African governance and community development. Working with Kwame, Sarah established the Nkwanta Institute for Cultural Exchange, bringing together international researchers and local communities for projects benefiting both academic knowledge and village prosperity. The Institute's work demonstrated that meaningful development happened through partnership and respect rather than external intervention and assumed expertise. Sarah's marriage had evolved into partnership, transforming not just their lives but broader conversations about development, cultural preservation, and international cooperation. Today, 3 years after her disappearance, Sarah Mitchell, now Ama Serwa, continues developing models for respectful cultural exchange and sustainable community development. Her story has become a case study in successful intercultural partnership. But for Sarah, the real transformation was discovering that home isn't geographical location or cultural identity you're born into. It's where you become most fully yourself while contributing to something larger than individual success. The research that brought her to Ghana had been about studying governance systems, but what she discovered was how to govern her own life according to authentic values rather than external expectations. She'd come to analyze how communities create belonging and learned how to belong herself. The mystery of Dr. Sarah Mitchell's disappearance had been solved, but what emerged was something far more beautiful. The story of someone who got lost in all the right ways and found herself exactly where she belonged. Sarah's story teaches us it's never too late to choose authenticity over approval, belonging over achievement, love over security. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is disappear from the wrong life so we can finally appear in the right one. Her journey reminds us that sometimes the most important discovery isn't of some external destination, but of our own authentic identity that may have been buried beneath years of social expectations and professional obligation. The American woman who vanished in Africa had actually been found by herself and by a community that welcomed her transformation. What started as academic research became the discovery of a lifetime, that home is wherever you can become your truest self. If this incredible story inspired you to think about what authentic living might look like in your own life, please like and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing true stories of transformation, courage, and the power of choosing love over fear. Remember, your true home and authentic self might be waiting in places you've never imagined, with people who will help you discover parts of yourself you didn't know exist. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is trust our hearts enough to follow them, even when the path leads somewhere completely unexpected. The mystery is solved, but the real story is just beginning. The story of how one woman's disappearance became the greatest discovery of her life.